Now this is just hilarious. Shakur Stevenson, after hating on Gervonta Davis, we find out that Ring magazine, owned now by Turki Al-Sheikh, who is also heading up Riyadh season, does not agree with him, and they place Tank Davis in, I'm coming for that #1 spot. Oh, the irony. Now, I posted this. This to me is just very funny at this point. And that's why I tell you guys all the time, it does not pay to hate, right? Just be real. I said hilarious. Over the weekend, so Diego Pacheco, Steve Nelson card, Shakur Stevenson said that Gervonta Davis isn't the #1 lightweight in the division, and that himself and Vasily Lomachenko deserve to be #1 and #2. However, Ring Magazine put this out and they have Tank at #1. So obviously they disagree with Shakur Stevenson, who pretty much fights on their network, right? It's what it is. Tank Davis is with PBC, so he's not as closely aligned with Turkey and Ring and Riyadh season and stuff like that. He's never been on any of their cards. And you have Shakur Stevenson, Ray Ford, that whole little clique, Keyshawn Davis, that hate on Frank Martin and call him a prospect in order to discredit Tank's KO win over him. But then Ring Magazine has Frank Martin in the top 10. Boom. You see it right there. They got Tank as #1, Lomachenko #2, and Shakur rounding off the top 3 at #3, right next to William Zepeda and Keyshawn Davis. Keyshawn, the 5 and 6 guy, are fighting, and 7 they got Murataya, Andy Cruz at 8, but they have Frank Martin at 9, and then Tevin Farmer. And you could argue Tevin Farmer, the #10 guy, beat the #4 guy when they just fought, but that's a whole nother story. The bottom line is Tank is #1. Now, I put out a tweet that got a lot of traction, 500,000 views on that tweet. And I was talking about how a lot of these fighters are envious and jealous of Gervonta Davis. And I think this illustrates it. I think this shows it. Everything that I just said is true. Nobody has responded to that tweet intelligently and said, oh, hey, you're wrong for these reasons, X, Y, and Z. It just didn't happen. The reality is, the reason why I say envy and jealousy is, you tell me what else makes a man act like this, where you got Shakur saying that he's #1 or #2 in the division with Lomachenko. Like, I don't know, but Shakur to me comes across as bipolar. 1 minute Shakur will give props to Tank, then the next minute he's trying to tear him down. Shakur has a record of 22-0, 10 knockouts. And how does Shakur feel that he deserves to be at the spot of #1 at lightweight over Tank? His lightweight career began with Shoshiro Yoshino. Nobody even knew who that was, because this Robson Conceição was from the past division, and Shakur got stripped of his title because he missed weight, right? So that was unprofessional of him. So that was his last fight in that weight class of 130. So he expects to be with Lomachenko as the #1 lightweight based on beating Yoshino, a abysmal showing versus Edwin De Los Santos where neither guy performed, and then Artem Harutyunyan, which is a guy that almost got stopped by Frank Martin, right? And he was coming directly off of a loss. So you guys are brain dead. How, like, yes, Shakur, he a good little fighter, but how does that make you the #1 lightweight? Because when we're talking about lightweight rankings, it is what it says it is. This is not like, oh, I moved up multiple weight classes. We're not talking about that. That's like if you were on the honor roll in 6th grade, what does that got to do with the 8th grade? You're in the 8th grade now. What you did when you were in the 6th grade is a moot point. It's null and void. It's irrelevant. So if we're talking about the Ring's lightweight rankings, you would have to go off of the current. Boxing is and always will be a what have you done for me lately sport. So again, Shakur goes from him and Tank are the best at lightweight, and then he gets mad, maybe Tank says something in the media or whatever, and then he'll try to renege and say like, me and Lomachenko are the number 1 and 2. Loma literally lost to Teofimo. I thought he lost to Jermaine Ortiz, and he lost to Devin Haney. So why do you think he should be number 1? And this is what's wrong with boxing. You got a lot of false prophets, a lot of people who will, put up these narratives and say like, oh, Tank, his resume is so abysmal and yada, yada, yada. But let's really unpack what they're saying and determine if that even makes sense. Shakur, I just went over his resume. You have a few fights in the division, and your best performance was against this unknown Yoshino guy, right? The Edwin De Los Santos fight, the Artem Haratunian fight, you won, but it really left more to be desired. Now you're fighting a prospect, but that whole crew is hating on Frank Martin, calling him a prospect. But Schofield's record is 18-0 with 12 knockouts. But you look at a guy like Frank Martin, and he had a very similar record when he was fighting Tank Davis, but he had better names. He had better names on his record than was the case with Floyd Schofield. So here's Frank Martin. So Frank Martin, he's 18-1 now with 12 knockouts. So the difference being he beat Shakur's opponent before Shakur and a guy like Michel Rivera, right? And he was ranked. So Shakur is hypocritical in the fact that if he fights a guy like Schofield, who hasn't the resume of a Frank Martin, it's all good. But Ray Ford and Shakur and that whole clique, they want to roast Frank Martin, but none of them are saying like, oh, Floyd Schofield is a bad. I just went over it. They have very similar records, but the difference is the quality of opposition with Frank Martin was better, right? So what are we talking about? We just seen Schofield get dropped in his last fight, and he still might give Shakur a tough fight, but that's the reality. At the point Tank fought Frank Martin, I don't recall anybody that had recently dropped him. So Shakur, I think he's hating on Tank Davis. I think a lot of these boys are jealous of Tank Davis, and it doesn't matter because no matter what you said, your own network don't believe you. They put you at number 3 and put Lomachenko at 2 and then put Tank at number 1. And the number 1 and 2 guy, we all know what happened when Tank was pushing the issue trying to get the Lomachenko fight in 2024. Lomachenko bailed, said he's not in the mood to fight. So Tank, no matter what they say, he's the top dog, period. Popularity, resume, exciting style, really in all metrics, Tank reigns supreme.